Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
How much do you know about IRAs? Did you know that there's such a thing as a self-directed IRA? Well, today's guest, Theresa Fette, is an expert in IRAs, and she's going to teach you the difference between traditional IRAs and self-directed IRAs, including how you can use your self-directed IRA to invest in cryptocurrency. So if you want to take charge of your retirement and become more knowledgeable about IRAs, or just want another way to invest in some cryptocurrency, then stay tuned. Theresa is going to teach you everything you need to know.
Theresa, thank you for joining us today. This is going to be a fun episode. I love the topic we're going to be talking about and the business that you're in, but I've got to start with just one little known fact that I'm not quite sure how many people know this, but I love this is ever since you were 5, you told every single teacher that you ever had that you were going to be the first president, I'm assuming, of the United States. Is that correct?
Yeah, the first woman president. It's underlined in all of my report cards growing up.
Nice. And now, is this still a dream of yours? Because we could certainly use some good leadership. I don't know if you're aware of that right now.
No, not so much anymore. I think, running for president nowadays is not the same as when I was a little girl. So.
Yeah, you kind of grow up and you realize, okay, let's see, this is probably going to take about $500 million. They are going to dig into every aspect of my life. And then when I get there, there's going to be a bunch of people contributing a bunch of money that then I'm going to have to figure out how to keep everybody happy.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah, it sounds like a great job. But you became the president of your company. And what an amazing story about how the investment firm actually found you to lead the organization. Tell us how that happened.
Yeah, so when I was an attorney, I was a tax attorney, probably only 26 or 27 years old at the time. And an investment group came in to interview me about self-directed IRAs. They had Googled self-directed IRA expert, and somehow my name came up in Las Vegas. They came and sat down and talked to me about IRA LLCs, then asked for a second meeting, which I thought, wow, this is a lot of work for a $1,000 entity. And then they ended up coming back the second day and then hiring me to be the CEO of the company and gave us 50% to run it.
That is a great story. That just shows you that if you're out there and you're running a business and you don't have a good SEO and you don't have, what you are, and choose a lane. We were talking about this earlier on an earlier show, is about how important it is to really narrow your focus and become an expert in something. So people, when they're looking for it, they know where to find it. So well done. Did you ever think you'd end up in this position?
No, I can't say that anybody grows up and says that they want to be a self-directed IRA CEO when they grow up. So I don't know that I thought that I was going to do that. But my dad was an entrepreneur, and I was always kind of infatuated with entrepreneurship. And so I guess I ended up in the right lane.
That's amazing. And also Fortune's 10 most powerful women entrepreneurs. That is impressive.
Yeah, that was an incredible, one of those humbling awards that you get and you wonder, 1,000 times over, how the heck did I win that one? But it was one of those things that it really changed the trajectory of my career. I was already on a successful path, but it just sent me there faster as soon as I won that award.
Well, everyone's going to ask the same question. How did you do it? And I don't want you to be, modest and, I was lucky I was the right person in the right place. Get a little, tell us a little bit, put a little ego into it. You did something, and this is important. And I want to show the audience that things just don't happen by circumstance. There's a lot of hard work that you put in order to put yourself in a position to receive that accolade. What were some of the things that you did along the way that positioned you to get there?
Well, they say luck is only preparation meets opportunity. So I feel, any entrepreneur that I've met that's been successful always says that they're lucky, and I feel the same way. But you're right, it takes a lot of preparation so when that opportunity comes along that you're ready for it. So I have 4 degrees, 10 years of schooling, that I went all over the world basically to obtain that schooling. I'm a tax attorney by trade, an accountant, a master's in tax law. So I always thought I would go down the law school or the legal route and become a partner of a law firm. And then just happened that the right opportunity walked through the door of the law firm that sent me into entrepreneurship. But I think at the end of the day, when my employees or anybody that I mentor ask me, how did I get here? I don't have anything else to say but hard work. I always tell people, if you got grit, and it's very truthful, you have to have a lot of grit to do this. You have to be able to work 14, 18-hour days, sometimes 24-hour days. You have to be able to work weekends. I was just laughing with my husband the other day that I haven't taken more than a 4-day vacation in almost 10 years. So, when you work for yourself, you set your own hours, but most entrepreneurs will tell you they work harder for themselves than they do for any other human being. So
Yeah, I get emails all the time, and I'm a young entrepreneur, and I just finished school. And I've got this little side gig, and I'm thinking about, what's your advice? I'm like, well, are you really? Are you sure you're cut out for this? Because entrepreneurship is not what you read in the on the internet. It's about 24-hour days, 18-hour days, no sleep, no vacations, very little income in the beginning. It takes a hard road sometimes to get what you want. And are you willing to do that? And most aren't cut out to do that. And
you have to have an iron stomach too. So, yeah. It's the highest of the highs, but I can tell you it's the lowest of the lows. And if you're prone to ulcers, like I am, like any other, you'll go through your share of ulcer medication and all of those things that when you're an entrepreneur, we definitely, I've had some of the biggest highs that most people only dream about. And then the lows have been, where I thought my company was disintegrating. I thought lots of different things happening to my family, my home, all of those things. And you have to be able to weather that storm.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? Because I hear so often from younger entrepreneurs that, that's easy for you Thor, to say, you've been an entrepreneur for the last 18 years. And, in the beginning, I know you struggle with these things, but those issues go away, right? It's like trying to make payroll, that's natural in the beginnings of an organization. But sometimes you can grow so fast, you can find yourself in another payroll crunch as a mature company. And then where it used to be $10,000 or $20,000, now it's $250,000 on Friday. The numbers just get bigger.
Yeah.
The issue.
I've spoken about with some of my friends that 14 employees. I remember when we had 14 employees and life was so easy back then. And then we doubled and just kept doubling. And life got, now we're up to 70 employees and life got a lot harder. And sometimes I wonder, why did I make my life so hard? Ultimately we ended up selling the company last January. So it was all the hard work finally paid off. But at the end of the day, I went from barely having to come into work to having to put in 18-hour days again toward the end. So.
Correct. Now, did you sell to another investment company?
A strategic bought us. So we got acquired by a large 401k provider, and we're really lucky. They've been fantastic to work with.
Good. Are you going to stay on for the long term?
2 years. That is what they say. Yeah, but so far the people are pretty wonderful to work with. But I still struggle with, can I be an employee? Can I be told to sit in this desk 8 hours a day? It's really tough. It's tough to do that when somebody else is telling you what you're supposed to be doing and when you're supposed to be doing it.
Yeah, I established a long time ago that I'm just unemployable. I make a horrible employee. I really do. I'll be the first one to admit. I'm just not. I'm a great team player. I'm a great team player, great leader. Just that whole thing, especially like when we have to do those ridiculous meetings and like fill out forms and stuff. I just rebel.
I feel your pain.
The reason I asked, my background was M&A with private equity firms. So I saw a lot of times with, non-strategic buyers, you just kind of went from one investment company to another investment company. And then of course they needed to lock you down for the next deal because you knew how to run the company. And it's this constant cycle of, when am I going to get off this the gerbil wheel, right? Because it just keeps going and going.
Yes. Yeah.
And 40 under 40, I've got to tell you, you inspired me to do something the other day. I looked at your 40 under 40, and I said, I can't qualify for any of these awards. I've aged out. So I bought the URL just yesterday, top 40 over 40. So like, I've got my own award platform that I can always be on. I'll never age out, and I can get other people that are over 40 as well, and you can be on it forever. I was going to do 30 over 30, and I said, I might get some kickback. I'm 54 now, but I'm planning on always being right around that 40 age. So,
well, I have some friends that are in some of these business groups that I'm in, CEO groups that I'm in, and it's funny. Some of them have aged out of some of the groups, and YPO, they age out. And in EO, I'm in EO as well, and they don't age out. And I have forum mates who are 50 who have been one of the most incredible friends as well as strategic partners that I can't imagine them not in my life. And honestly, some of them, they gave me the advice that got me this far. One of them's advice to me, and he was 15 years older than me at the time, 10 or 15 years older than me, said just, never overspend your means, and said, here's how much you're going to make, and you're never to live over that. And even when you're making more than that, never live over this. And he kind of mentored me through that 10-year process. And, sitting here today, I have no debt. Those types of that advice that came from someone who was quite a bit older than me, had just been there, done that. It's irreplaceable.
That's great advice. So you're part of the Las Vegas chapter?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I'm in EO and YPO here. So it's difficult to be in two forums, but,
It takes up a lot of time. I'm the mentorship chair for Atlanta.
That's a great chapter.
Yeah, thank you. Do you hold any of the, not presidents, any of the board positions?
In EO, I held them all. So it was 10 years.
Do you hold any now?
I do not. I finally have positioned myself off the board,
okay.
And then I'm working my way with YPO. But as you know, the board position is another job.
Yes, it is. I'm heading up to GLC in April, so I figured I'd run into you in the hallway, say hi. And you got WPO once you age out of YPO. So, excellent organization. So anyway, you're always welcome on my 40 over 40. I know you're not over 40 yet, but when you do reach over 40, you can come join my group.
Soon, at the end of the year. At the end of the year, I'll come join your group.
All right. So give us some of the lessons that you've learned along the way. You've shared that, it was a lot of hard work. You did a great job of creating a niche. So when they went after who they were looking for, they found you on a Google search. That's great. I just love that. What are some of the other lessons that you learned along the way that worked, and some of the things that maybe did not work?
I just got asked by my law school to give a commencement speech to the graduates in May. And as I'm working on my speech, your question has a lot to do with that speech that I'm doing and the inspiration that I need to leave behind. And it kept coming back to a few core concepts. One of those core concepts was you can't be stuck where you are, and you can't believe that the world's going to look the same in 10 years as it looks today. So, giving that speech to lawyers, they all think they're going to go work in a law firm and it's all going to look like that. When the truth is the legal profession is changing at an astounding rate, and probably will change, 10 times more before they even finish their first few years in the legal world. And if the legal world kept up with the rest of the world, we'd be even further, So we saw a program online the other day. I saw a speaker talking about where has the world gone, and it's gone from we've watched with the listing platforms on the New York Stock Exchange go from products and services to platforms. And if you're not on the boat, you're going to miss the boat, and you're not going to really progress. You'll always be that employee that's making 50,000, 100,000, whatever. It's a good living, but it's not going to change your life if you're not keeping up with where things are going. Then the other core concept that came down was like the self-awareness concept. And one of the things of the last 10 years of growing this company and being the leader of these people is that I find that my most successful leaders, and for myself, are the ones that are completely self-aware? Do you know that you have this weird eccentricity that makes everybody upset? Can you understand how to control your chaos? One of the things that makes me a great entrepreneur is that I enjoy change, I push change, I like change, but employees don't like that so much. And I've learned that as I mature as a leader, how to control that change in a way that doesn't make them scared anymore, but makes them excited. But that took a lot of honesty with myself and creating an environment with my employees where they could talk to me about some of my eccentricities or negative qualities that they needed to change. And, I always tell people what makes you good makes you bad. So you can take every quality that people admire about me and I can flip it and make it a negative quality that people don't admire about me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. Any strength that you have is also a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Every weakness that you have is actually a strength as well. And it's how you use them. And I love what you said, that being self-aware. And I find that the greatest leaders are self-aware. Mm-hmm. And those that are not great leaders tend not to be self-aware. How can we become more self-aware in the workplace or in any part of our lives?
So in my speech, actually, I'm talking to them about surrounding them with people who tell them the truth. And I've talked about in my career in public speeches that I've done prior, the person that you see sitting in front of you today is 80 pounds lighter than the person who was sitting here 5 years ago. And it was a good friend of mine, an EO, when he said, what's your next big thing? And I said, to build a $100 million company. And he looked me straight in the face and said, why don't you do something that matters? And at first I took it as a put down, like he doesn't think I can do this. And it turned out he wasn't meaning that at all. He says, you can build a $100 million company in your sleep. Perhaps you should start thinking about your health. All I've heard from you over the past year or two is how bad you feel, how you can't sleep at night, and all these things. I looked in the mirror and somehow over 2 babies and building a company, I gained, 80, 100 pounds. And I had to get back down to, a healthy weight. And he's the one, my husband couldn't even tell me that I wasn't looking at the same person in the mirror anymore. I've had employees who were courageous enough to tell me that, in the very beginning when I was a young leader, that you're ruling with fear and not with hope or encouragement or all these things. And I'm lucky to have surrounded myself with people who are willing to be honest with me, but I was always honestly open to the criticism. And I'd go home and I'd really think about, is this the kind of person that I want to be when I grow up, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be just as open, but if you're surrounding yourself with people, yes men, that's exactly what you're going to get, and you're going to see no growth in yourself.
Yeah. It is so important. It's at really the center of everything that we do with our clients. Is if we can't tell you the truth, we can't work together. Because if we're starting from a position of if you want to go here and you change the landscape and you're not telling us, first of all, where we're starting from, we're going to come up with a completely different plan than we would if we were based over here. Or where's there? I'm losing my pitch. You got the idea. In order to get to where you want to go, you got to know where you're starting from. And then we've got to be able to tell you the truth of how we see it. And it may or may not be correct, but it's just the way that we're viewing it from the outside looking in. And a lot of people don't want to know that truth. They want to, live in that little bubble. And I think that's why we lack some great leadership, not only in our country and the politics, but in business as well, is that true leadership means doing the right thing, not the easy thing. And a lot of people shy away from that.
Yeah. Well, I was just talking to one of my friends last night. I think most people are motivated and driven by fear. And probably the difference between myself and other people, I was talking to him last night about this particular concept, is that I'm motivated by fear too, but it doesn't scare me. So I usually take myself to worst case scenario. What's the worst thing that can happen? I could lose my company. I could do this. And if I could live with worst case scenario, you'll see that I'll do it. I also don't put myself in a position where if those things happen, that it's the end of the world. And what I find with most people, and I'm thinking in particular, a young woman I was mentoring as she was starting up her new company, the worst thing that she said that could happen is she had to get a job. Yeah. And then as I walked her back from that cliff and said, well, you're not taking risks in your current career to progress in entrepreneurship because you're so scared of getting a job. But is that really the worst thing? You need to get over this fear of the risks that you're taking. Take the risks, and you're either going to fail amazingly or you're going to succeed amazingly, either one. But at the end of the day, is the worst thing really going out and getting a job? And then when I finally got her over that hurdle, her company ended up doubling that year. But she was keeping herself from growth because her fear was motivating her to not take risks in her life.
Yeah, I have a mentor that likes to say, they can't eat you. No matter what happens, at the end of the day, we live in a society where they're not going to kill you. They're probably not going to eat you. So it's like, we build up in our mind what we think is the worst case scenario. And all you got to do is just keep peeling that onion back. Okay, so then what happens? So then what happens? Then what? And they get to, it's like, okay, if that's the worst case and that happened, they're like, oh, that's not really that big of a deal. Yeah, it's not fun, but
Yes.
I can start over and I can move forward. During my live events, I talk about, I give a picture. I'll share this with you. I think is really helpful. If you picture a well, like a water well, and you picture this rope going down the water well, but instead of at the bottom having water, you actually have a fire. And what happens is in life, people climb down that rope. They get too close to the fire and they go, oh, that's hot. And they climb back up. But as soon as they get away from that flame, that fear, they stop and they never end up making the entire journey, because all they're doing is spending their entire lives running from the fear, running from the pain. And as soon as you remove yourself far enough from it, it doesn't matter anymore. People that I was 40 pounds, 50 pounds heavier than I am now. And I kept bouncing between this weight, and I never really got serious about it, because it got to the point where it's like, oh, I don't like this. And then I'd lose a couple of pounds, like, oh, I'm okay. And I just kept going back and forth. Yeah. And it wasn't until there was a compelling future and a vision of where I was going and what I was creating and my standards that I set for myself, that I got out of that trap of running from the fear, running from the pain, or using pain as a motivator, because it's a great motivator.
Mm-hmm.
It's instilled in us, right? When we were living in caves, we had a hairy animal thing that wanted to eat us, and we were fearful of it. It made sense. It kept us alive. I wanted to go back to the topic about the lawyers, because I think that's such an interesting one. I've always encouraged my kids, I've always encouraged people that I mentor that, getting a law degree is much more than becoming a lawyer. There's so much that you can do with it. So many CEOs, CFOs, COOs of major organizations have law degrees. It's a sign, get a law degree and then go and get your MBA at Harvard. Get those two things and you can write your own ticket. You can figure that out at that point. But law is changing at this point. Where do you see, how do lawyers that are in school now, how do they need to change? How do they need to evolve?
Well, I think one, you got to realize why you go to law school. So you don't go to law school to be a lawyer necessarily. So when kids ask me, should I go to law school? I ask them, do you want to learn critical thinking skills and negotiation skills? Absolutely, you should go to law school then if you're poor in those skill sets. Because that's exactly what law school taught me, was to think under pressure, quickly, on my feet. You have one test that you're supposed to prove to your professor that you listen the entire semester, no open book. Right. And there's only a few places in life that put you under that kind of critical amount of pressure. Right. So that I learned critical thinking in law school. I learned how to think on my feet. I learned negotiation skills. I learned how to be persuasive. All those things I learned in law school, and they just happened to help me be a really great entrepreneur as well. But if you go to law school to just be a lawyer, which is what most kids still believe that they need to be when they grow up, or if you get a degree, and I had actually a few lawyers that worked for me in my legal department that, I was counseling one of them. You're a fantastic salesperson. And if you foster this skill set, your law degree is only going to help you foster that skill set, and you're going to make 5 times more money than you'll ever make as the general counsel of this company. But she couldn't get over the fact that she received a law degree and that she was supposed to be an attorney.
Yeah.
And I told her very clearly, those supposed to be's are going to keep you from moving forward. So, I still think going to law school, I have some of the best professors I've ever had in my life I had in law school. And I learned some skills that I would have never learned anywhere else in my life. But I was never supposed to be a lawyer. I always tell people I'm a recovering attorney.
I love that. Well, the most important or most powerful words in the English language are the ones that follow the statement "I am,"
Mhm.
because it starts to define who we are. And many people, as you talk to them, it's like, "Hey, who are you? Or what do you do?" I'm a lawyer. I'm a doctor. I'm this. I like that. A recovering lawyer. Yeah, let's jump on over into the self-directed IRA. In that space, first of all, if some people may still not know what it is, so just give them a brief overview of what it is and how has the industry changed over the last 10 years?
Well, the only difference between a self-directed IRA and a regular IRA, so it's just a retirement plan that you can put, $5,500 a year into every single year. So you can't put a ton of money into it. But the difference between a regular IRA and a self-directed IRA is you can choose the investments that you put it into. Now, in my world, that tends to be alternative assets. So people are investing in real estate, private companies. I think Facebook was one of the most famous self-directed IRAs you saw it on television that was through a self-directed IRA. Mitt Romney made self-directed IRAs famous for what he did. But it's basically the IRS says that you can invest in pretty much anything except for 5 things that are hard to value: coins, alcoholic beverages, and it's mainly collectibles if you look at the list. And quite a few people just don't know that you can do that. So how it's changed in the last decade, I think it's more well known. Started in the 1970s. Nobody really knew about it. Now, there are several companies that do what I do now. We're still one of the largest out there. But even if you think about how many accounts all of us have put together, we still don't even they think we have about 2% of the IRA assets out there in the world. So there's still 98% of those people who have IRAs who still don't know you can even do this with your IRA.
What's the process if you have a normal IRA or a standard IRA now? What's the process of creating or starting or moving over to a self-directed?
So you can either, just like you would start an account over at Merrill Lynch or Morgan Stanley, you do that here. You fill out account paperwork and you can start funding it with $0. You can put money in from day one, or you can transfer from another IRA that you had stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and move it over into a self-directed IRA, and you just fill out the transfer paperwork. Most of the time I hear from people that their advisors say this is way too complicated. And I find that at the end of the day, it's because the advisor has never heard about it. And so the easiest thing to say is that this is illegal or this is too hard because the advisor cannot speak knowledgeably, instead of doing what they really should do is say, I don't have a lot of knowledge about this, but let's find you somebody who does, because I've seen people make a lot of money through these vehicles, and it's really sad that the average person doesn't have the right advisors to kind of direct them to do things the right way.
Are you finding that generationally, the younger generation thinks differently? Let's take the millennials versus the baby boomers. Or the baby boomers might be actually or aging out of the IRA. But what's Gen X is below the baby boomers?
Uh-huh.
All right. So is there any difference between their investment strategies, the willingness to adopt the self-directed IRAs between the millennials and the Gen X's?
So alternative assets in general have been growing at 30% a year. So you see tremendous growth in this asset class, and I really believe that has to do with the generational gaps. I think you see people my age and people definitely underneath me that don't believe in the stock market anymore. Stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, they still do some of it, but they don't believe in it like the generation before us did. And so we see a lot more of that. I do see the younger generation, and starting with my generation, Generation X, investing in themselves. And even though you can't do a self-directed IRA and invest in a company that you're running or you own, what I do find is that the millennials and the Gen Xers are willing to put everything on the line to invest in whatever they think that they all think they're going to invent Facebook or something, and honestly some of them are. So what I see is that they're putting less into retirement and they're putting more into their investment in themselves today. I still believe in a strategy where they should have some diversification. I hate to see these young kids completely think that retirement is not needed, because I think that they put themselves in a really bad position if everything doesn't work out. So I still believe there's some sort of balanced strategy out there, but I can understand why they choose to invest in themselves over the stock market nowadays. I mean, just watch what I did over the last few weeks. Just imagine. So.
Well, look, if it doesn't work out, we have Social Security, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right, yeah,
If it's there when we're around. Yeah.
that's right. And then once upon a time,
Exactly.
there was this thing called Social Security. Most people don't even realize that Social Security was only designed to be around for a couple of years. It was during the Great Depression that it came about, and it was only supposed to be there just as a stopgap. And just, of course, once you institute something, it's hard to take it away. You mentioned coins, but I've got to ask the question because I know every millennial out there is asking the same thing. Can I buy Bitcoin in my self-directed IRA?
You sure can.
Oh,
so, cryptocurrency
we're gonna lead with that one.
Cryptocurrency is pretty hot today.
That's right.
So in order to do it in a self-directed IRA, you just set up an IRA LLC underneath the entity, and that's how we do it now. But I foresee there's going to be a change in that process, and having it be using the wallets and et cetera through time. I think myself and other counterparts are going to figure out a process that's even better. But as of right now, if somebody wants to do a cryptocurrency inside their IRA, they just set up an IRA LLC and then set up everything that they need to do to facilitate that. So yes, you can own cryptocurrency in your IRA currently.
There you go. All right, I got to tell the producer, Mr. Producer, buy cryptocurrencies in your self-directed IRA. We're going to lead with that in SEO sides. He already said, sign me up. I don't know if you heard that.
Just buy one Bitcoin, right? Like I have some friends that only bought one Bitcoin and now, yeah.
That's right. I actually, I was talking about that just recently on Facebook. And I said, please. I said, if you want to invest in anything, I don't care if it's pork bellies, I don't care if it's cryptocurrency, I don't care if it's stock market bonds, whatever it is, please learn how to play the game because there's a game that's played. You need to understand and read charts. You need to understand trends. You need to understand it's become almost a gambling kind of mentality, which I hate to see. Educate yourself. Understand.
Well, if you see the people investing in cryptocurrency in a large amount, all those people have nothing to lose. If they lose their entire cryptocurrency wallets, their lives don't change. They're billionaires or
yeah, absolutely, right? Yeah.
So what I hate to see is some of these people who are in their 50s and they decide to go play the game, and they risk their entire retirements on things like this. And I always tell people the game is still the same as it was 50 years ago. It's still diversification.
Yeah. And if you don't know how to play the game, there's an idiot in the room. And it's you. You've got to, but the professionals will end up with the money at the end of the day if you don't know what you're doing.
Yes, exactly.
You've got to. It's the same thing with business. I see it all the time where people want to play at business. That is not a game that you want to play at. You've got to understand there's rules, there's ways of engagement, and you've got to understand what different things mean and how you need to act. The number of people that can't read their financials is staggering. The people that think net profits is actually cash. Yes.
There are business owners that believe that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Members that don't get that. Yeah, absolutely. They should be getting it. Tell the audience how they can get in touch with you because I guarantee you you're going to be opening some new accounts with the cryptocurrency LLC underlying groups.
The easiest way is to go to our website www.trustprovident.com. TRUSTPROVIDENT.com, and that's the easiest way to open an account. So that's the easiest way to get in touch with us.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming on. Congratulations on your 7th year on the Inc. 5000. Will we see you in 8th year?
No, now that we got acquired, they get to take all the credit for our growth now.
Is it a private company?
Yeah, they're still private as of now, but they're really large. So we'll see what happens to them in the future too.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.